4 words, scrawled in shaky red crayon on a crumpled napkin, pressed against the tinted window of the black Escalade. The boy couldn't have been more than 8 years old, his eyes wide with a terror that cut through the city's afternoon haze and straight into the man watching from the adjacent lane. The light turned green. The Escalade lurched forward, but the image was burned into the man's mind, a silent scream that awakened something he had spent 7 years burying. They took my mom. The man was Silas Vittori, though no one had used that name in over a decade. At 38 years old, he was a monument of a man, built from the kind of muscle and menace that cities are built on and broken by. He sat behind the wheel of a custom Brabus G-Wagon, the engine a low growl that mirrored the feeling in his chest. His suit was a tailored Tom Ford, dark charcoal wool that cost more than the car the boy was in. But it couldn't conceal the geography of his past. Ink crawled from the collar of his bespoke shirt, a tapestry of Gothic script and thorny roses covering his neck. On the right side, the words, "Sins of the Father," were a permanent, self-inflicted penance. His hands, resting on the steering wheel, were weapons sheathed in discipline. Across the knuckles of his right hand were the letters E-A-R-N. On his left, T-A-K-E. They were the 2 commandments of his former life. A life where he was known by only one name, Crown. For 12 years, Silas Crown Vittori had been the undisputed king of the entire eastern seaboard's narcotics and logistics trade. He commanded over 200 soldiers, controlled territory spanning 3 states, and moved product with the efficiency of a Fortune 500 company. He was a master of controlled violence, a strategist who thought 5 moves ahead of his enemies and 10 moves ahead of the law. His word was bond. His threats were prophecies. Then, 7 years ago, the bill for that life came due. A rival, desperate and foolish, had targeted his family. Not him. His 6-year-old daughter, Maya. She was killed in a car bombing meant to send a message. It did. The message it sent was the complete and utter annihilation of the rival syndicate. Crown hunted them down himself, a force of biblical wrath. When it was over, when every man responsible was a ghost, Silas Vittori walked away from the throne. He dismantled his own empire piece by piece and vanished. The monster went to sleep. Now, sitting in midday traffic, the monster was stirring. The boy's face, the desperation in his eyes. It was a ghost of his own daughter's fear. Silas felt the shift inside him, the cold, calculating calm that had made him a king. He had spent the last 7 years building a legitimate empire. V-Sec Logistics, a global security and transport firm worth 9 figures. He had board meetings and quarterly reports. He had traded his crown of fear for a crown of corporate respectability. But the instincts, the ones forged in blood and betrayal, they never left. They only slept. And a child's silent plea was the only alarm clock they answered to. He made a split-second decision. The Escalade was 2 cars ahead, signaling a right turn. Silas pulled the G-Wagon into the opposing lane. The blare of horns, a symphony he ignored, and cut across the intersection, blocking the black SUV's path. 2 men were in the front seats of the Escalade. The driver, a thick-necked brute with cheap sunglasses, laid on the horn. The passenger, lean and nervous, rolled down his window. "What the hell is your problem, man? Move your truck." Silas didn't respond. He simply put the G-Wagon in park, the engine rumbling like a caged beast. He opened his door, the sheer size of him seeming to suck the air from the street. He was 6'4", 250 pounds of dense muscle. And as he walked toward them, the sun glinted off the heavy, 24-karat gold Byzantine chain around his neck and the sovereign rings on his fingers. He moved with an unnatural grace, A predator's economy of motion. He stopped at the passenger window. He didn't look at the man. He looked past him, into the back seat, and met the boy's eyes. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. A promise. "You're safe now." "I asked you a question," the passenger said, trying to inject authority into his voice. It came out as a squeak. Silas slowly turned his gaze from the boy to the man. His eyes were a flat, chilling gray, devoid of heat or emotion. They were the eyes of a man who had seen the worst of the world and had been responsible for a good portion of it. "And I'm going to ask you one," Silas said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone. It was calm, quiet, and more terrifying than any shout. "You have 5 seconds to unlock the back door and get out of this vehicle. After that, I will remove you from it myself. And you will not like the way I do it." The man scoffed, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. "You don't know who you're messing with. We work for—" Silas cut him off, not by raising his voice, but by lowering it further. "I don't care if you work for God himself. Your protection means nothing to me. Your 5 seconds started when I began speaking. You're at 2. The driver shifted, reaching for something under his seat. Silas's eyes flicked to him, a flicker of movement so fast it was barely perceptible. "I wouldn't," he said, the 2 words hanging in the air, like a death sentence. The driver froze. The passenger looked between Silas and his partner, his bravado crumbling into dust. He saw the tattoos on Silas's hands. He saw the chilling finality in his eyes. This wasn't some random road rager. This was something else entirely. "Who the hell are you?" he stammered. Silas leaned in slightly, his presence overwhelming the small space. "You're new to this city, aren't you? Ask around. Ask about the man they used to call Crown. I'll wait." The name landed like a physical blow. The driver's face went white. The passenger looked like he was going to be sick. The stories about Crown were legend, horror stories told to scare new muscles straight. A ghost who leveled an entire organization for his daughter and then vanished. They weren't just messing with some guy in a nice truck. They had stumbled upon a myth. And he was very, very real. The passenger's hand trembled as he fumbled for the button, and the click of the doors unlocking was the sound of his complete surrender. "Choose," Silas said softly. The passenger door flew open, and both men scrambled out, hands raised, backing away from the Escalade as if it were radioactive. They didn't look back. They just ran. Subscribe now, because what happens next proves that the most dangerous-looking protector is sometimes the only one you need. Comment where you're watching from. This story will remind you that true strength is used to defend the weak. Silas watched them disappear into the crowd before opening the rear door of the Escalade. The boy, whose name he would learn was Leo, stared up at him, his small chest heaving. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with a dawning sense of wonder. "You came," he whispered. Silas's expression softened, the hard lines around his eyes easing for the first time. The monster receded, and the father emerged. "You asked for help," Silas said, his voice gentle. "I keep my promises." He unbuckled the boy's seatbelt and lifted him out of the car. Leo was small for his age, trembling slightly, but he didn't cry. He just held on to Silas's arm, his small hand gripping the expensive wool of the suit jacket. "They have my mom," Leo said, his voice cracking. "They took her from our apartment. They said they'd hurt her if I made any noise." The devastating simplicity of it hit Silas harder than any bullet ever had. A child, forced to be silent while his mother was taken. "Where did they take her, Leo? Do you know?" Silas asked, keeping his voice steady, a calm anchor in the boy's storm. A warehouse, by the docks. I saw a sign. Pier 4, he said, the details sharp, a child's mind clinging to specifics for survival. They were on the phone. They said she was the first of the new shipment. The word shipment turned Silas's blood to ice. This wasn't a simple kidnapping. This was trafficking. This was a level of predatory evil that, even in his old life, he had considered beneath contempt. He felt a familiar, cold fury begin to build. He knelt, bringing himself down to Leo's level. The gold chains clinked softly. Leo, you did something incredibly brave today. Braver than you know. Now I need you to be brave for a little longer. I'm going to get your mom back. I'm going to bring her home. When I make a promise, God himself couldn't break it. Do you understand? Leo nodded, his eyes fixed on the man's face. He wasn't scared of the tattoos or the imposing size anymore. He had seen what this man could do with just a few words. He had chosen the scariest person on the street because his gut told him that only a dragon could fight other dragons. Silas made one call. The phone rang twice before it was answered with a simple, "Yeah." "Bishop, it's me." There was a pause on the other end, a silence filled with years of unspoken history. Bishop had been his right hand, his most loyal enforcer for the entire 12 years. When Silas walked away, Bishop had gone straight too, running a high-end car customization shop, but the loyalty never faded. "Crown." Bishop's voice was heavy with surprise and concern. "It's been a long time. Everything all right?" "I need you," Silas said, the words in order wrapped in a request. "Pier 4, Warehouse 7B, human trafficking. They have a child's mother and likely others. I'm 10 minutes out. Come heavy." There was no hesitation. "On my way." The line went dead. Silas looked at Leo. "A friend of mine is coming. He's going to wait with you. He'll keep you safe while I go inside." Silas guided Leo into the plush leather interior of his G-Wagon, the boy looking around at the opulent cabin as if it were a spaceship. Silas pulled a burner phone from the glove compartment and handed it to him. "If you get scared, you call this number. It's me. I'll answer, no matter what." Minutes later, a matte black Dodge Charger SRT Hellcat slid to a stop behind the G-Wagon. Bishop got out. He was as big as Silas, a man carved from granite, his face a roadmap of old battles. He saw Silas, then his eyes fell on the boy in the passenger seat, and he understood everything without a word. He just nodded. "I'll watch the kid," Bishop said. "You do what you do." Silas clasped his friend's shoulder. "No killing. Information first. Then we shut it down. Permanently." Bishop's lips curled into a grim smile. Professional courtesy. As Silas walked toward Warehouse 7B, the setting sun casting his long shadow before him, he felt the years peel away. The Tom Ford suit felt like armor. The weight of the gold on his neck and hands felt like a king's regalia. He wasn't Silas Vittori, CEO, anymore. He was Crown, and he was going to war for a child's promise. The warehouse door was steel and rust. It was locked. Silas didn't bother with the lock. He took 2 steps back and drove his shoulder into it, the sound of tearing metal echoing through the deserted pier. He moved through the breach into the cavernous, dimly lit space. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and fear. He saw them immediately. 4 men playing cards at a rickety table under a single bare bulb. They weren't the same 2 from the car. These were the next level up. They jumped to their feet, reaching for weapons tucked into their waistbands. "Who the hell are you?" one of them shouted, his voice trying for tough but landing on shaky. Silas kept walking toward them, his steps measured and silent. "I'm the man who owns the car your two runners just abandoned on Fifth Avenue," he said calmly. "They left a child in it. I'm here to collect his mother." The men exchanged nervous glances. The leader, a man with a spiderweb tattoo on his elbow, stepped forward. "You took a big risk coming here alone. You need to turn around and walk away." If this story is proving that a monster's past can fuel a hero's future, hit that like button right now and share it with someone who needs to see it. Now back to the story. Silas stopped about 10 feet from them. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't adopt a fighting stance. He just stood there, an immovable object of pure menace. "Let me educate you," Silas said, his voice dropping to that lethally quiet register. "I'm not asking. I'm not negotiating. I am telling you what is about to happen. You are going to take me to her. Then you're going to tell me who you work for and where the rest of them are. That is the only version of this where you are still breathing in 5 minutes." The leader laughed, a high, nervous sound. "You hear this guy? Thinks he's some kind of movie star." He pulled his gun. "This is real life, pal." Before he could even raise the weapon, Silas moved. He closed the 10-foot distance in a blur, his left hand clamping down on the man's wrist, twisting it with surgical precision. There was a sickening crack of bone. The gun clattered to the concrete floor. The man screamed, a raw, piercing sound. Silas didn't let go. He pulled the man close, his other hand gripping his throat. "I am going to ask you one more time," Silas whispered, his face inches from the man's. "Where is she?" The other three were frozen, paralyzed by the sheer speed and brutality of the takedown. This was controlled violence, efficient and absolute. This wasn't a brawl. It was an execution of will. The man with the broken wrist was sobbing, terror in his eyes. They're in the back, in the containers." Silas shoved him toward his crew. "Show me." They stumbled over themselves to lead the way, moving past stacks of rotting pallets and discarded machinery to a row of shipping containers at the back of the warehouse. The leader, cradling his shattered wrist, pointed a shaking finger at one. "She's in there." Silas motioned for him to open it. With his good hand, the man fumbled with the heavy latch and pulled the door open. Inside, a woman was huddled in the corner. She looked up, her face bruised and streaked with tears. It was Leo's mother. Her eyes widened, first in fear of the men, then in confusion at the sight of Silas. Silas looked at her, then back at the 4 thugs. "How many more?" he demanded. "What?" the leader stammered. "How many more people are you holding?" "That's it. Just her." Silas's eyes narrowed. He could smell the lie. He walked over to the next container and pointed. "Open it." "There's no one in there, I swear." Silas didn't wait. He grabbed the latch himself and tore the door open. The sight made his stomach clench. 14 other women and children were inside, packed together in the darkness, their faces a mixture of terror and despair. They ranged in age from teenagers to women in their 40s, and 3 were young children, no older than Leo. The cold fury inside Silas solidified into a diamond-hard resolve. He turned back to the 4 men, and for the first time, they saw something truly terrifying in his eyes. It wasn't anger. It was purpose. "You lied to me," he said softly. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "There is an active human trafficking operation at Pier 4, Warehouse 7B. There are 15 victims and 4 suspects. Send everyone," he said, and hung up. He then made a second call. "Bishop, we have 15. Get ready." He turned back to the traffickers. "The police will be here in minutes. Your lives are over, but your pain is just beginning. You're going to tell me who you work for. You're going to give me the name of the man at the top." The leader, now understanding he was dealing with a force far beyond his comprehension, started to talk. He gave up a name, a location, the entire infrastructure of their disgusting trade. He sang like a canary, hoping for mercy he would never receive. The wail of sirens grew louder. Silas walked over to Leo's mother. "My name is Silas. Your son sent me. He's safe. He's waiting for you outside." Relief washed over her face, so powerful it brought a fresh wave of tears. "Leo, my brave boy," she sobbed. The police swarmed the warehouse, a tactical team moving with professional efficiency. Silas faded back, letting them take over. He saw an officer, a detective by his suit, named Miller. Miller knew him. He knew the ghost stories about Crown. He saw Silas standing there, saw the rescued victims, the cowering traffickers, and put the pieces together. He walked over, his expression a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Vittori? What the hell is this?" "Just a citizen doing his civic duty, detective," Silas said, his tone flat. "The one with the broken wrist is your primary source. He knows the whole network." Miller stared at him for a long moment, and then at the shipping container full of rescued people. "I don't know what happened here," Miller said, a grudging respect in his voice. "And I don't think I want to. You did a good thing tonight." Silas just nodded and walked out of the warehouse, leaving the chaos behind him. He didn't do it for praise or for absolution. He did it for a little boy who wrote 4 words on a napkin. Outside, Leo was standing by the G-Wagon with Bishop. When he saw his mother emerge from the warehouse, flanked by paramedics, he cried out, "Mom!" He ran to her, and she collapsed to her knees, wrapping him in an embrace that was fierce and desperate and beautiful. Silas watched from a distance. He saw the raw, unfiltered love between a parent and a child, a sight that was both a comfort and a knife to his own heart. This was why he had walked away. This was what he had lost. Leo's mother looked up, her eyes finding Silas. She walked over to him, holding her son's hand. I don't know what to say," she stammered, her voice thick with emotion. "There are no words. You look so—" She trailed off, gesturing to his tattoos, his sheer, intimidating presence. "I know," Silas said, a hint of a sad smile on his face. "Leo wasn't afraid," she continued. "When the police asked him what happened, he told them he found a king and asked him for help." Silas looked down at the boy. "He saved himself," Silas said, deflecting the praise. "He was brave enough to ask. That's all that matters." If this story proves that one person's courage can save many, hit subscribe and share it with everyone you know. Because Leo didn't run to the police. He ran to the man covered in tattoos and gold chains, and that person moved heaven and earth to save them. That night was a turning point. Rescuing Leo and his mother and the 14 others wasn't an end. It was a beginning. The information Silas extracted from the traffickers led to a federal investigation that dismantled a network spanning 5 states, resulting in 47 arrests and the rescue of over 100 victims. But for Silas, it wasn't enough. It was reactive. He needed to be proactive. He had spent his first life building an empire on pain. He would spend his second building a legacy on protection. 6 months later, he liquidated $50 million of his personal assets and established the Mafia Foundation, named for the daughter he could never save. Its mission was simple and absolute: to provide immediate extraction, sanctuary, legal aid, and relocation services for any child or parent in danger. It was funded by his legitimate businesses, and staffed by former Special Forces operators, forensic accountants, and the best victim advocates money could buy. It was VSEC Logistics with a soul. The Foundation's headquarters was a state-of-the-art, fortified building in the heart of the city, a beacon of safety disguised as a corporate office. And its unofficial motto, known only to those who worked within its walls, was a promise Silas had made to a little boy. We keep our promises. 5 years passed. The Maya Foundation became a force of nature. In its first year, it rescued 87 individuals. By the end of year 5, that number had climbed to 612. They had a 100% success rate on extractions and had contributed to the prosecution of dozens of criminal rings. Silas Vittori, the former kingpin, was now one of the city's most respected, if enigmatic, philanthropists. He never gave interviews. He never attended galas. He just did the work. He was at the Foundation's headquarters, looking over a map detailing a new operation in the Midwest, when his assistant buzzed him. "Your 4 o'clock is here, Mr. Vittori." "Send him in." A teenager walked into the office. He was 13 now, tall and lanky, with the same intelligent eyes Silas remembered from that day on 5th Avenue. It was Leo. He visited once a month, every month, without fail. It had become their ritual. "Leo," Silas said, a genuine smile reaching his eyes. "You're taller every time I see you." "It's the basketball," Leo said, grinning. "How's your mom?" "She's good. She's a paralegal now, for a firm that does pro bono work for families like ours." Leo looked around the office, at the photos on the wall, not of galas or celebrities, but of smiling families, of children playing in the Foundation's safe house gardens. "You know," Leo said, his voice quiet, "I still remember that day. I was so scared. But when I saw you, I don't know. Everyone else was looking at their phones. You were the only one who was really looking. And you looked powerful. I knew you could do something. I knew you were the only one who would." Silas walked over to his desk and picked up a small, framed object. It was the crumpled napkin, now carefully preserved behind glass. "You did the hard part, Leo. You had the courage to hold this up to the window. Everything I've built here," he said, gesturing to the entire building. "It all started with this, with your 4 words." Leo looked at the man who had saved him, this walking contradiction of tailored suits and prison ink, of terrifying power and gentle protection. "You kept your promise," Leo said. "You saved my mom." "I keep my promises," Silas affirmed. After Leo left, Silas stood alone in his office, the city lights beginning to twinkle below. He walked over to a simple, unadorned photo on his credenza. It was the only personal item in the room, a picture of a little girl with a bright, gap-toothed smile. His Maya. For 7 years, he had been a ghost, a man living in the shadow of his sins. But a boy in a black SUV had given him a new purpose. He had shown him that the monster inside him didn't have to be buried. It could be aimed. It could be used to protect, not to destroy. He had spent half his life taking. He would spend the rest of it giving back, one promise at a time. If this story reminded you that our deepest pain can become our greatest purpose, subscribe, share, and comment below. Because somewhere right now, a child is looking for someone strong enough to help. He looked from his daughter's smiling face to the city sprawling below. A kingdom he once ruled with fear, and now protected with a fierceness born of love and loss. The work was never done. The threats were always there. But so was he. He was no longer a king. He was something more. He was a guardian. He was Silas Vittori, and he was crowned.